I just want to say thank you to all of our judges that came out on a Tuesday to fill their lungs full of candy heat. Round of applause for our judges, please. Thank you all for coming out. Couldn't do this without you guys. I can't stress how important it is to showcase the heat that everyone puts in. Cultivation's no easy task. We all know this. We're here. It's Tuesday night. You got to get up super early tomorrow. You got up super early today, but you're still here. Cultivation is a passion. What we want to do is showcase everybody's hard efforts, and that's what the Battle Royale is about. That's exactly why the contenders are the judges, because we want to respect each other's craft. At the end of the day, it comes back to quality. That's it. That's why we're here. We're judging based on quality. We don't test on fucking percentages of THC potency. We're not testing on anything like that. This is about aroma. This is about smoothness of taste. That's it. So I'm sure you guys had a nice experience. Out of the 19 contenders, only one can be crowned the candy champ of Sacramento. So that's really cool to see what we did tonight. Now, this is very surprising because this particular winner actually just showed up today and heard about the candy battle that was going on today. And I don't have anything else to say besides you all selected the winner, because this particular contender swept in all three categories: in aroma, in smoothness, and in taste. Elite Workshop, where you at? Where you at, Elite? Bring on up. Come on up, man. So, Elite Workshop, come on up on the stage, bro. Get up here. Take your strap.
Thank you.
So, it's pretty incredible because you guys just got into Sacramento. Hey, round of applause for our champs here, guys. Round of applause. It was a unanimous victory in all three categories. Introduce yourself. How long have you been cultivating for? Talk about it.
My name's Eric. Grew up in Long Beach. Started cultivating 18 years ago. Old school methods. This is my main grower, Juan Navarro. I moved up here about a year and a half ago to get on like the legal side of things. Always been like a trap grower my whole life. So it's been a change. The whole industry for me is like one big change, but humbled. I mean, this is cool. It's good to show that like some of like the old school methods still work. And yeah, Cocoa Perlite 7030. We've mixed up a lot of nutrients, but I went back to like kind of like my old school recipe of house and garden. I don't want to give away all my secrets, but that's like the base. With a lot of like other additives, but yeah. You want to say anything?
I appreciate being here. I don't know. It was a lot of weed smoking going on.
He was the judge, so.
Contenders are the judges. But guys, congratulations. Welcome to Sacramento. Be proud. This is a good title for you guys. And I can't thank all you guys contenders enough, because this is it. This is what we're all about. We really appreciate you all coming out. Dave, you flew out all the way from Colorado, bro. Thank you, Big Dog, for coming back. That was our Las Vegas candy champion, Dave, Mile High Dave with the Colorado Cherries. So it's really cool to fucking see that shit coming through and competing up here with everyone else, man. A lot of respect. And for everybody. Oh, number 9, what number? It was number 19, yes. Now, I also want to call out, number 19. I'm also gonna share the second place was jar number 15, which was Nimbus Cannabis. Shout out to Nimbus. All right. And coming in at third place was jar number 4, Humble Harvest. Shout out to the Humble Harvest crew. So, contenders, I If you want to know where you placed in the overall rankings, come see me after the show tonight. But again, thank you all for coming out. The Gas Battle Royale is going on May 3rd in Los Angeles, so we'd love for you to participate if you got that gas strain still in your lineup. Thank you all. Much love. Amazing time. Congratulations on it. You guys are fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Now I'll get into my official introduction. Thank you all for coming out to the CoNNect. Shout out to Indoor Sun Hydro for welcoming us tonight. Round of applause for Kevin and team. You guys are amazing for hosting us. So much love, care, and hospitality. Can't say thank you guys enough. And to our panelists, thank you all for coming out. Really appreciate everybody taking the time out of their busy schedules. You guys are leaders in the industry. We appreciate everything that you do to put into this nursery space that we are operating in. So this is a special night for us. I'm personally happy that we're finally doing this discussion too. I'm a nursery operator. I started in this industry in the genetic space. Had a Prop 215 nursery that I joined in 2016, and I learned a lot about that space. And it was cool. You know, we learned a lot about genetics and propagation and a lot of things that you probably shouldn't be doing now. And that's why we're here today, because we leveled up. We all learned somewhere. And really, when you start looking at what do you build your business around, it's passion, right? I think any business owner up here knows that business is built on passion because you're going to work as long as it takes. There's no hours. And especially in genetics, you don't just make something and put it out there. There's a process. It takes time. You collaborate with breeders. You breed your own genetics. You test those. You validate them. Rinse and repeat. Now, where we're at in the industry today is very interesting because here in California, we've got the candy wave, right? It's pretty obvious what's going on. The market wants candies. That's why we got a strap up here tonight. We got the live battle royale going on in the room next door where we have entries that are candy forward profiles. So you're probably thinking, what's that qualify as? Well, it's sweet aroma. It's candy. It's lemon cherry gelatos, gelato 33. And anything else that falls in that profile of the sweetness. So I want to throw a quick shout out to My Flora DNA because this isn't just a smoking competition. This is all about celebrating the cultivators. And what that means is also recognizing who's got the heat. My Flora DNA is using a genomic fingerprint for all of the contestants. So all of our contenders, the requirement is to get a validated DNA fingerprint. And what that does, it allows us to look at the genomics at a trait agnostic level. So now we're able to kind of compare everything on a chart, and we're going to see the percentage of similarities on the chart. So we will be crowning a winner tonight. The judges are the contenders. So every brand that competed in there is a judge. So this isn't something you can buy. This is not about who's got the best hype flower in there. It's a blind competition. And that's exactly what we want. This is not a competition. It's celebrating each other's heat. But it is a very straightforward 3-point system. Aroma, smoothness, and taste. Bag appeal and effect are not part of this. This is all about flavor. So we're making the judges enjoy about 19 entries tonight. So if you see them ending at 8 p.m. and you know that they're enjoying their time up there, just say hello, maybe give them a hug, see how they're doing. So let's jump into this, guys. I really want to say thank you again to our panelists because I've personally worked with each one of you guys, and this is really why the Nursery Federation is something that is near and dear to my heart. It starts with genetics, and ultimately this is why we want to be able to work with each other. I don't see anybody in this entire industry as competition, but especially when it's with these companies. This is really where we need to align the most and set proper expectations. As a nursery operator, we've run into a lot of professional immaturity in this space. And I'm not saying that it's always your fault, it's all of our faults. It's addressing what that problem is and finding a solution to move forward. Things happen. It's how do you set yourself up for success in the future? And ultimately, when you're living and when you're dealing with the living and breathing plant, you're gonna run into issues, whether it's pest or pathogen, instability. Well, there's levels to this game. That's why there's also levels of price points. You pay for what you get sometimes. And if you trust that repetition and you start to recognize who you're doing business with, right? There's definitely people you probably don't want to do business with after a couple of experiences. For me, you have my trust until you don't. So I want to know what it is as the process has started to begin of propagation. You learned a lot, right? You start to see the different growth patterns. Everyone has their own style of doing propagation, whether it's inside of a lab, doing meristematic TC or nodal initiation, or you're doing asexual propagation. So what we're doing, Cultivated started off as a propagator, and we're still a propagator. We're not doing in-house breeding or pheno hunting. We work with tissue culture lab partners, like Node, like Starts. We pull in meristematic Gen 0 TC plants, and we propagate those, and we have a cycle. So why I wanted to bring up everybody on here on stage is so we can talk about these things. What sets us apart, but why one of us might be a good solution, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. There might be some perspectives that align, or maybe they don't align. That's why we're here. We want to be able to talk about that stuff. So without further ado, I'm going to start with some introductions, and if Alan, you can start us off at that end, we'll come right back down this way. Please.
Alan, I have Oakland Seed Co. I have a nursery in Oakland, not as big as these guys' nurseries. An indoor nursery. We focus on candy, gasterons, 33, and all that, but we also make a lot of our own strains and get those to the people.
Thank you, Alan. Welcome.
Justin, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Starts. We're a tissue culture lab. We offer cleaning and banking services, also mom stock for nurseries that want to start clean and stay clean.
My name is Alex Vavan. I'm the Customer Success Operations Manager at Conception Nurseries. Conception Nurseries is bringing Gen 0 TC clones at scale to the industry. So we work with a variety of breeders to bring in novel genetics. We put them through our TC process, and we're able to provide Gen 0 clones to the industry at scale.
Hello, Fred Barnum, Finest Cannabis. We're a cannabis nursery. We're actually partners with Starts. They do all our tissue culture meristem work for us. We provide, basically our product is we take Gen 0 mother stock and we provide Gen 1 clones to the industry. We have a very robust breeding program within our business, and we also partner with about 13 breeders throughout the state and throughout the country.
Hi, my name is George Workman. I'm one of the owners of Refined Genetics. We have a nursery and a breeding program that we run in Santa Cruz, California. We specialize in propagation of cuttings. We pump out about 80,000 cuttings a week. And we also pump teens like this out of the facility, so we can kind of spare the growers the headache of doing the virus testing, doing the TC, doing the gamut of storing the genetics. We like to just serve and ready to deliver, so people can focus on the nug and the brand, which is what matters.
Amazing. Round of applause for our panelists, please. And guys, I'm really grateful because each one of you has a different operation within the vertical, right? You all do something a little bit different, and value proposition wise, like we can sit up here and pitch our product all day long, our solution. That's not what we want to do. I want to dive into the topics that we started, the whole discussion around as operators. So what does the commercial validation testing process look like? What does the selection process look like? We all know that there's a million ways to do this stuff, but I want the crowd to walk away with, these are some standard practices that we as operators really believe on and there can be some things that can get taken away, and people can choose to see what the best solution is. So let's start off with that, commercial validation, testing, and selections. Alan, I would love to start you off with that question, because you've made a lot of selections in the recent past, because candy, right? You had a whole candy pollination project, and talk to us a little bit about what you were looking for when selecting candies, because I do want to preface that question with, candies are small bud traits, right? These are not heavy yielders. They are finicky. They're susceptible to a lot of mold and rot, maybe even susceptible to higher levels of pathogenic load, right? Talk to us a little bit about that.
I mean, like you said, they're not much yielders, and they're sensitive plants. And we have a lot of demands for the flavor. You know, I'd rather work on maybe something more interesting. A lot of people are crossing the runts to stuff, but we just went deep.
Microphone to your chin right here.
Like here. So basically, we did a large inbreeding project with all of the runs. We took all of them and created S1s and F1s and S2s, looking specifically for higher yields. We joke that we're going to call one LCG killer. We grew them in the same room with their parents, and so we have these nice controls too. So when you get some jars, there'll be some actual Obama and LCG and runs snuck in there, but it was mainly about just trying to improve the plant instead of create something new, because it is a really nice plant. I mean, it's got a lot of great qualities. It's just not very robust.
Thank you for that. George, how about you guys? Because you guys have your own in-house breeding and selecting process. Piggyback on what Ellen just talked about. Anything different that you guys are doing?
Yeah, we have an analytics laboratory where we take the terpene analysis and the cannabinoids, and we kind of see where the baseline LCG is and see where, like, what's hitting the hardest on the streets. We take that, we sample it, we get like a baseline, we like educate anybody who's helping with the selection process. Hey, this is the nose that the brokers want. This is what real candy is, because sometimes my definition of candy and your definition of candy, it's pretty defined now, but at first it took some education for everybody.
There's a lot of fruit involved in the candy discussions. Like,
exactly.
That's not sweet.
Yeah, it's sweet, but it's not candy, right? And so there's a lot of that going on for a while. And so, but we try to take like a really like taste approach, smell approach, but then at the same time we like to take the analytical approach too and have that involved. Yeah.
So interesting. I'm out of curiosity. What was the candy profile, the top 3 terps in that you typically saw?
You know what? We just sampled it. I could pull it up right now, but
come back to that.
Yeah, we'll come back to
that's
it.
cool.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I haven't thought about profiling the terpenes. I'm looking at, structure, obviously nose, and that taste, right? That taste is so unique when you start to, come across all the different candies and candy crosses, especially when we're talking about, Skittles crosses, right? Like that Z forward terp or a Sherp forward terp. Those are pretty defined and dominant. It's hard to find those, though, with commercial viability behind it. So I would like to talk to Alex about this next, right? So you guys partner with breeders, and you guys bring in their selections. So talk to us a little bit more about that process of what makes the menu, per se.
Sure, absolutely. So I think menu curation is one of the main goals of the selection process, right? So simultaneously chasing this hype, trying to forecast what the market is looking for while still providing, for lack of a better term, like perennial strains, the bread and butter, your GMOs, Gushmans, Gorilla Glue, Purple Punch. Folks are looking for novelty when it comes to genetics, but folks are also looking for their bread and butter. And servicing folks both indoors and outdoors, they're gonna be looking for a variety of different traits. So, completely understanding what the industry is looking for as a whole and trying to hit that mark while also maintaining an adequate amount of these bread and butter varieties. So when we're working with breeders looking to bring in new genetics, it doesn't necessarily all have to be new hype. It could be an improvement from something coming in the past. But ultimately, I think a really important part of the selection process, especially for a nursery, is that menu curation, right? You can only have so much purple candy gas on the menu before it becomes redundant, and allowing for that variety, allowing folks to stand out in their respective markets, something that's really important to us as well. So,
couldn't agree more, man. it's almost a double-edged sword. It's like you want to give the market what they want, which is candies, but if you're so limited on just your very insular offerings, like what's next? So
Right, exactly. Like, I mean, personally, I have the hope, OG comes with a strong comeback, and you hear folks.
Hey, how about we bring gas back? How about it now?
Absolutely. You have folks asking for some older hitters, like where's the Blue Dream been? Sour has been making a huge wave recently in the past couple of months. So, definitely to your point, just trying to track that hype while still having a solid menu of bread and butter offerings.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because the classics are starting to come back in demand as well. Like, let's just put it this way, how much of the market has actually seen the original Sunset Sherb, or the original G33, or these original cultivars, these heritage classics? I mean, I think at this point we can call them classics, because there's so much breeding projects out there, which is great. We're literally we're all selling breeder cuts, so people have access to this gear. They can make their own lines now. We're literally kickstarting their breeding projects, which is great. But now it's also talking about the genetics that are in the heritage classic line, which I know Justin at Starts, like you recently released the Sunset Sherb. Talk to us about some of those classics real quick and how that helped you curate your menu.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I can tell you the structure of our lab specifically, originally it was for myself, actually. And so I just hoarded genetics and everything I thought could be and would be important long term. However, I will say it's been instrumental in keeping up, or trying to keep up with how fast the market pivots in its demand for different cultivars. So knowing a lot of these classics are starting to come back, it's been pretty easy to bring some of these out, but also really awesome, because it's only compounded the work I've done to bring that forward. So it's pretty fun and awesome, and watching the market demand change so fast, it's crazy. I mean, I can't believe it's like fashion. You can't keep up. So, how are you going to do thousands of Gen Zero clones and then build that stock up, turn around and, market change? That's tough. So.
Well, I really think it comes back to education at the consumer level and at the bud tender level. Like we encourage, if you guys are here tonight or you're watching, please encourage a bud tender to come. The CoNNect is for you. We want you to level up with us and really understanding terpenes at a different level, and understanding that it's not indica or sativa, right? It's flavor and effect. What are you trying to drive? What's the experience like? Everybody wants to try something different, and I don't ever want to hear indoor or outdoors better than one or the other. Like, that is just the most asinine thing. Please don't bring that up here. But there's obviously benefits, and that's really what this is about. How do we get past the nuanced wave? Well, I think as operators, we want to be able to have consistent, clean, healthy libraries. And that's really where, right now we're catering. We're catering to the market because that's how people are running their business, but it's also what the market wants. So balancing the two is a little bit one of those, we're aware of it. That's why we're here. We're still here today. Our doors are still open. So we're adapting to the times and doing the best that we can with that, which leads me to trust and transparency, right? Fred, I'd like to talk to you about the royalty program that you guys have with your breeders, and really how this, the curation process of what makes it onto the finest menu, just like conception, right? You guys have your own curation process, and ultimately keeping breeders paid along the way. I think up to this point, there's been a lot of challenges with royalties being paid. And if you could, please.
Yeah, I think what I would say is we kind of built our whole platform around being a value-added partner to the cultivator. When I came into this industry back in 2017, I just kind of fell in love with the culture. It's just some wonderful people in this culture. There's also a few others that we probably don't want to hang out with, but there's some really wonderful people. And the first thing that I found out here is that most of the nurseries weren't validating the products that we were selling. And all the other industries I've been in, there's always a validation process, right? And in this particular industry, a nursery would, sling somebody a cultivar and hope for the best. So when we built our platform, it was all about validation and characterization. So right now we have 724 indoor lights that all we do is indoor characterization and validation of strains. We take them from like 12 plants, then up to 20 pounds, and then we'll sell them through our showroom distro here in Sacramento, which gives us the ability to understand what's going to move through the market, what price people are going to be able to get, because at the end of the day, the cultivators want the best ticket. Also, we have a 44 2,000 square foot automatic light dip hoop houses out in YOLO, so we can actually characterize everything in early depths, mid-season depths, late depths, and also full season. So the validation process has always been really near and dear to my heart. So that's how we can actually understand what we can actually push forward to the market that's going to help any cultivator out there be successful. As far as our breeding program, one of the things I found out early on talking to breeders was that for whatever reason, they would create these products that would do well in the market, but they never got paid for it. They were never able to monetize their creations unless they were selling, a stem for $1,000 or $250 or whatever it may be. So it was really important to us to create a process to where not only our internal breeders get rewarded for their creations, not just getting paid hourly, they're in our breeding program as well, and they make really good money. And then our 13 breeders that actually we contract with outside, they make very good royalties. So, some of our guys make $20,000 a month. Some make more than that. Some make $5,000. So making sure that a breeder and their creation can be monetized so they can continue to work on creating and not worry about how they're going to get paid for their creation has always been something near and dear to our hearts at Finest. So I guess to kind of sum up that whole philosophy about that is I'm not a creative. I'm a process guy, right? But I understand how creatives work. Most creatives are not process people, right? They're very creative. I wish I was creative like my friend Alan down here. He's very creative. I'm not. But what I can do is I can take his creations and I can monetize it for him so he can actually focus on other things. And then not only bring those into our nursery and mass produce them throughout the state to where they can get paid for every stem that's sold.
That's a great overview. Thank you. No, that was great. That's pretty. I think that's the question. Like, breeders want to know, how do they get paid in the genetic space by working with the nursery, right? Once the genetics out in a commercialized nursery, is that the end of the road for them? And I think you answered that perfectly. Can
I follow up?
Please.
Sorry, thank you. One other thing, so we actually sign a contract with all of our breeders so they can actually, if we don't live up to our promises, they can take us to court. The other thing is, one of the things that I found out about 2 years ago was that when a breeder, basically submitted their creation to, whether it's a cultivator or a nursery or whatever it may be, they submit it, and 3 years later they're trying to figure out why they haven't been paid on it. So we created this thing called a breeder's portal. So as soon as a breeder gives us a cut, we intake that, and it's loaded onto their breeder portal. They're the only ones that have access to that breeder portal. As it's going through our entire process, all the growers' notes are given. COAs are on there. Everything you can think about taking it through that process. Sometimes, unfortunately, we spend a lot of money doing this, and they don't make the mark, and we release them back to them. So if it's not something we feel like we want to run through our nursery, we always give them back to them, because maybe they can monetize it with somebody else.
That's a great point, Fred. And ultimately, there's no cost to trust, right? It's really developing a process. We're trying to create a pathway for transparency. And that's also, again, I'm going to throw a quick shout out to My Flora, because this is really where we've adopted the DNA fingerprinting for intake, for output, right? If you give us something, we want to make sure it is exactly what it is that you wanted to intend to give us. Clones have been mixed up all the time. Like, that's what's cool about the service, and that's why we're using it to power the Battle Royale. You can literally test dried flower against the genetic fingerprint. So I know there's been a lot of use cases that this could have been applicable to. And Fred, you just brought up, if somebody steps out of bounds, like there's potential litigation here, right? So if you're intaking material or providing material to somebody, you probably want to make sure you're giving them some sort of proof that this is what it is. So, we can nerd out all day long on use cases on DNA fingerprinting, right? Trade agnostic DNA fingerprinting, because I know data is very valuable. This is your creation. I'm talking to you breeders out there right now. This is your creation. You have something that you can use to actually be able to distribute that and have some form of agreement, have some sort of trust and transparency in your process. Now, we don't want to go back 4 years and understand what happened back then with another molecular biology lab. That we're past that. We're professionally maturing in the space, because everything you just touched on, Fred, is about trust and transparency. How do we get to the next stage to continue to grow and find new selections? right? That's the best part about this is we're using tools to innovate and to create new workspaces. That's all we want, guys. Really cool to see everybody here networking, collaborating. And that's what this panel discussion here tonight is about, is collaboration. And really ultimately just deciding how to move forward. We're trying to set some new standards in this space and understanding that there has to be leveling discussions that are not always easy to have. So again, guys, I appreciate you all being on stage here tonight because the nursery space, in my opinion, is the hardest vertical in the industry. It all starts with genetics. And nursery operations, tissue culture labs, this is the new standardization. Any other questions back here? How are we on time? Anthony, we good? Cool. I got a question for the audience. Why do you choose a nursery? Why? Is it price? Is it genetic menu options? I'm genuinely curious. Anybody like to answer? Change of flavors. Change of flavors. Variety, right? We just talked about that at the very beginning part of this. If you don't have candies right now, a lot of the market is just not calling you. I know I've had to make a hard correction because the menu was not getting requested. So how do we stay within that pathway of the evolving requests of flavors? Is it a big request or is it some micro pocket requests? Right? These are some challenges that we have to ask for, and you start talking about forecasting, right? How do you forecast for the future of what the demand is? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, you really have to have a close pulse to the market, right? Understanding what's going to be popular in the next 2 to 3 years is really a coin flip, and I think it's about leveraging your risk and putting enough effort into these varieties that are perpetually popular, and then putting your eggs in the right basket when it comes to forecasting that hype and really doing it in a way that will ramp itself up, right? You get out a couple of tester packs to folks to get feelers out, and once desire has really solidified itself in the market, then you can take off with ramping up production. It's one of the worst feelings to put a bet on a genetic and ramp it up and think that the market's going to eat it up, and it kind of falls flat on its face, right? So it's about leveraging risk there, right? Understanding that there is going to be ebbs and flows for desire in the market and trying to capture those ebbs and flows, but also securing your position with these varieties that are in perpetual demand, right? Currently the purple candy. So until you bet against the purple candy, right, you have to maintain a sufficient stock and, you know, rub the magic ball and see what's coming in the future, right? So I think it's really about leveraging risk and giving people those options and actually offering, you know, newer options at a smaller scale and letting that desire build up and systemizing the process rather than going gung-ho and, you know, my purple cake is going to take over the market. You know, no one has anything better, and it's really about leveraging risk.
One thing I'll say I find interesting that is happening with the candy wave is it's so strong. I'd say, 2 years ago, the heavy purple wave has got to be blacked out, right? That was a huge thing. And then it turned into candy, purple candy, but the real candies are camo packs. They're not straight purple. So a lot of people are now, or a lot of bulk buyers are okay with camo packs, a little tinge of purple and some green. As long as it's not lime green, but a little bit of purple. Doesn't have to be blacked out anymore because they want that candy nose and that candy flavor so much. That one's kind of blowing my mind that it's that strong, and I think it's going to be at least a couple more years or longer, especially with the now the trend on the traditional side with the sprayed packs, because people want candy so much, which, that's a whole nother conversation. But
it really is a whole nother conversation, but it's the reality. People expect to have that loud pungency coming through that is extremely sweet, that tastes like candy, that smells like bubble gum. Like, all this stuff is infusion, and this is a very challenging thing for the consumer that doesn't realize this is not actually that, right? It's been infused with some terps. Go ahead, Alan.
On that topic, yeah, it's like leveraging your risks. We have like 5 candies on our menu. We have like eight cuts on our menu. And I know that people had been asking for Gorilla Glue for a while, and I was all for it because it's really easy to clone and grows really fast, and people will be happy. And so we kind of took a risk on that, and we just flopped. Like nobody, like a couple of sales, and like that was it. And a lot of times what you're hearing is what's not out there, you know. So like with sour and stuff, everybody's asking for sour. Well, you know, if you give them a little bit, they'll probably be satisfied, and you'll be stuck with just thousands and thousands of sour. So, I don't know, it's tough.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're going to get a little bit of sales off of that, and then it's moving on, right? Because they just want a little bit of variety. Go ahead.
That's what I love about like the hash market is they bring they keep the spice of life rolling with the flavors and lots of different terpenes, lots of different stuff going. So it's really fun to enter this time of year when all the hash people are growing, and always reserve a little bit of the mother stock for those guys. So it's cool to watch the hash thing progress too. Even internationally, you're seeing some new technologies coming out and stuff where it's like static hash technology and things. So it's
and there's not as much pressure on color.
Exactly.
Too, when you're doing
it keeps it fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally, yeah, and I'm thinking the weed thing's probably gonna be like wine, like everybody says, even though it's never gonna be exactly like wine. It's its own thing. It's weed, but like the similarities are probably gonna be like the Pinots, the Merlots, and all those things are gonna be like the gas, the candy, and there's 5 or 10 of them, right, that really dominate, and it's probably where I see it going is balancing out that way. There's probably, I'd say, more Pinot, or like there's probably more Chardonnay sold than anything. I don't know what. But yeah, I don't know what that top seller will be, but it seems like everybody's got a lane in the wine industry. I'm sure we'll all have our lane here. So,
I think we found out something interesting because in our distro showroom, we sell thousands of pounds of flour. And our distro manager came to me one day and he goes, you know, Fred, we're selling all this stuff bulk. This was about 2 years ago. He goes, why aren't we going after some of these retailers and selling direct for them, bagging it for them, you know, them moving it through their own distros or what have you. And what we found out, which is really kind of interesting to me, and it may help some of you, is that a lot of the retailers, even the larger chains, they're not wanting to buy candy. They're wanting to buy a lot of stuff that is really interesting to us. So just maybe as a vehicle for you folks, you know, as you're growing, if you can create some partnerships with some retailers or through a distro that has retail partners, there's actually a great market there, and the tickets are really good. And not only that, they're the type of people that when they start building that clientele to move whatever strain that is that you're looking to run through, they come back, and it actually gives you something that you can grow over and over and over. Maybe small quantities. These guys come in and buy like 20 pounds. But, you know, hey, a 20-pound sale is a great sale, right? Especially if it's something that's not candy.
And those things yield too.
Yes, they do. It's really been a lot of fun, and I'll give a shout out to our distro manager, Brad, because it was his idea and he's killing it.
Yeah, I think definitely serving these sort of microeconomies, right, where to your point about the sour, for nursery operators, if there is, you know, we'll move back into this, like the logistics of offtake and stuff. If there's a consistent desire for a specific offering that might not necessarily be popular to the rest of the market, if you have a deal with a distributor, folks are looking for, you know, sativas or something less, you know, that's not purple candy, that's going to be able to service like the greater market share. Just having that understanding between each other where, you know, if you have the desire for a novel genetic that's not necessarily offered on the year-round menu, if we have a formal agreement for offtake, as nursery operators, that makes our lives a whole lot easier, where we can make just enough sour for you where we're able to satisfy you and your microeconomy while not burdening ourselves by having all of this extra load on the back end. So definitely servicing, you know, to your point about these microeconomies, and we like to talk a lot about the California industry. If you take a step back and look at, you know, global market, it might be a little bit too soon to say something like that, but just the greater legal market in the United States, how different things are from state to state. This purple gas wave is really taking over the West Coast, and just understanding that, you know, there's lots of pockets to, you know, for these sours and for these sativas, for the folks looking for more like heirloom varieties like the Blue Dream, hazes, etc. So from a nursery operator standpoint, all it really takes is a mutual understanding that you do have a consistent desire for this, and being able to service like sort of those smaller orders is really important too, right? It adds to that variety. I think it's really important.
When 7-Eleven maybe starts selling weed, we might see a little more variation.
For sure. But that's a great point you bring up about, propagation agreements. There is the capacity space to bring on X amount of mom plants to produce X amount of clones, and maybe the offshoot can be offered into retail, per se, or whatever might be the case. But, that's a big piece around keeping communication with your nursery partners is key. That is why we're here. We're an extension of your business. Breeders, you've heard it from the TC experts up here. There's breeder programs, there's ways to monetize your gear, and that's a big piece of it. It's just building that trust and transparency. I really appreciate all you guys sharing all the processes and just value add services that you're providing the industry. Because again, I respect you all as colleagues, as industry leaders, to help set the tone for the world. Because everyone's watching what California's doing, and I'm proud to be up here right now with you guys. Because understanding the state lines will break down at some point. We will be national nurseries at some point. We will be global nurseries at some point. This is why we're doing this, because we want to help set the standardization process. That's why we're here. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for coming out on a Tuesday night. Round of applause for our panelists, please. And I got to throw some shout outs and some thank yous for all of our sponsors. If you don't realize this, but this event is held because of Indoor Sun. Hydro is so hospitable to have us here. Round of applause for Indoor Sun. Kevin and team, I can't thank you guys enough. All of our booth sponsors here. And just so you're aware, if you're a supplier partner in this arena with us, you have a validation from a cultivator that is actually using your solution. You can't be a part of the CoNNect and expect to pop open a table here and get in front of everybody in this room unless you have a cultivation brand or cultivator that's actually saying, yeah, this solution works. That's not what we're not trying to sell shit here. We're trying to give solutions. So ultimately, thank you all to our booth sponsors for being here tonight, because you appreciate the value that this network, that these owner-operators are in this room making decisions to try your solutions. That's also why we're live streaming on Grow World. Nick, I appreciate you letting us hold the CoNNect events on this platform, because we realize that the trial campaigns that you can get through Grow World, if you want to try any of these, any of these solutions at scale, that's why Nick's there. Nick put together Grow World as a commercial validation platform. So again, we're continuously growing on this solution. We're building an empire here, guys. This is what we're doing. We're working together. We're leveling up. That cheesy slogan on this banner back here is not bullshit. We're literally growing together right now. And I can't stress this enough. We want to make sure that you guys are welcome and you're here to level up. So with that being said, we will be announcing our winner of the Candy Battle Royale at 8:30 here on stage. So we're going to wrap up this panel. I'm going to go tally up some results, and we'll be back on. Thank you guys so much for coming out.
Thanks, Serge.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Oh, for sure. Oh, no. I hate
Great job, guys. Appreciate it, man. That was a lot of fun. It was great.
Hey, can we get just...
Part of this discussion is around creating awareness around the options that you have, whether you're a cultivator or a breeder and you want to be able to work with a commercial nursery to actually make a living off this. There's outlets for this process. That's why we're doing this, guys, is just create that awareness around certain solutions, and everybody has a wonderful solution. It may not be a one-size-fits-all either. That's why we're here. So I would love to talk about a little bit more about pathogen screening, because this also is near and dear to my heart. When it comes to pathogens, whether it's in the actual plant itself, or it's maybe it's in your facility, maybe it's in the water tray, maybe you have clogged drip emitter and you're harboring Fusarium in there now. There's a lot of ways that pathogens and pests can be impacting that. So I'd like to actually start this part of the conversation specifically because a protocol, right? I want you as a cultivator to be responsible about taking genetics in, whether it's from cultivated or refined or finest, it doesn't matter. You should have an intake protocol at every single moment of the way. If you're trusting plants from another nursery or another exterior source to come into your facility, you're literally welcoming in anything that they might have already had over there. So what's that protocol look like? Do you have a quarantine room? Number one. How long do you quarantine for? Is it a day? Is it 2 days? What are you doing during that quarantine period? Are you cutting open a plant and actually inspecting it under a microscope? Are you looking for stuff? And what about the stuff you can't see? Are you sending a sample into a lab like MyFlora to do a palpate and viroid test, which you get back in 24 to 48 hours? $21, I think, is something around there-ish. If you're a cultivator at scale and you can't afford to do testing, you can't afford to hold on to those plants, what are you doing? You really need to look at yourself and say, why am I intaking all this potential challenge? And that's really a big part of it, is what does your protocol look like? We can talk about dunks. We can talk about certain beneficials that you can inoculate. I don't think we need to go down that deep, but hear me out on this. Do you guys have any certain tips and processes that you'd like to air out there so that when you guys are working with your clients, that you do have something like, hey guys, guess what? We use micronized sulfur to make sure that those plants transported properly, that it's also a good barrier. Don't use any oil-based treatments for at least 2 weeks, right? Stuff like that. Talk to us a little bit about that. What about you, George?
Yeah, happy to discuss that. So when we intake genetics, it's like the most important thing for us to quarantine them. We have grow tents with HEPA filters. We bring them in, we test them through our qPCR, make sure there's viroid pathogen-free, Fusarium-free, all the different fungal pathogens. And then once we clear it from the lab, we make sure we, upon inspection, scoping and things like that, the lab, everything, all the boxes are checked. Then we move it into our commercial production where we put it into tissue culture, we make S1 seed out of it, and then if it's commercial, like if it's in high demand and we need to fast track it, we'll bring it into grandmother stock production. But I think one of the main things that's helped us is just doing rigorous testing on all of our mothers, and also I'd say testing visual understanding of vigor and growth and being able to visually cull, pathogen testing with qPCRs and lab equipment. And then I think the most important one by far is just training your staff. Training. So it's like the more you can train, the more you can invest in your people. And instead of just passing the blame down to your staff, just working with them day in, day out and getting them and giving them the knowledge they need to understand the importance of the process. Yeah.
That cultural aspect, George, is so key. You got to have people that trust the process, that care about the process. Literally, like when you touch a plant, think you're touching raw chicken. It's that level of understanding. If you're touching raw chicken, you're going to go eat your cooked food, or are you going to touch? No. You want to wash your hands. You want to sterilize in between these plants. So, I mean, that's the biggest thing, is really aligning with your team and making sure that they're not the vector, making sure they're not the ones using dirty shears between this plant to the next plant, or defoliating from this table to that table. A lot of vector potentials if your staff is not well aware of how pathogens actually transfer. It's a great point. Thank you. Who else would like to add on to that?
Yeah, I think definitely alongside a really robust intake protocol, right? Screening for pathogens upon reception to make sure material you're introducing into your production pathway is clean. It's definitely an important part of the process. But I think the other side of that story is the facility that you're trying to maintain and propagate these clean genetics in, right? So facility hygiene being a really important part of the process, especially for operators utilizing tissue culture. So Conception, we actually have an in-house pathologist coming to us from UC Davis, Maria Rojas, and facility hygiene protocol goes far beyond implementing SOPs for sanitation and cleanliness. It has a lot to do with monitoring and studying microbial pressures, different points in the year. The microbial pressures you're dealing with during the cold, wet seasons are going to be a lot different than conditions during the summertime, and having a facility hygiene protocol to guide your sanitation efforts is of the utmost importance, right? It's one thing to have clean stock. It's another thing to have a clean facility to maintain that cleanliness. So to your point, Sergio, about some of these contaminants simply being ubiquitous, right? Fusarium, botrytis, aspergillus, all of these microbes are floating around in the atmosphere, and it's very likely there's some of those floating around in the atmosphere here at Indoor Sun Hydro, right? So bearing that in mind, going back to your grow after an event like this, if you want to be really technical about it, it does pose a severe risk to be introducing absolutely anything from the exterior world to your cultivation facility. So things like lab coats, designated pairs of lab shoes, folks deploy Tyvek, hairnets, etc. At a surface level, it seems like folks are overdoing it, but bearing in mind how volatile microbes can be, it only takes a couple of colony-forming units to be introduced to your facility until they can localize and begin multiplying. So maintaining a really robust facility hygiene program is of the utmost importance for any nursery space.
Excellent point. It takes just one small little amount of pathogenic pressure to be introduced to inoculate your facility.
And to comment on sort of the compounding effect there, right? If you're not keeping tabs on that, a lot of the issues with pathogens don't necessarily present themselves in an acute fashion. You don't get fusarium and all of a sudden the plant turns purple, right? It's an accumulation, and during that accumulation phase, basically up until you notice the problem, you have this distance behind you that you have covered where you didn't keep tabs on it, right? So it's this compounding effect where it starts small and it turns into this snowballing issue until boom, it presents itself, and by the time it presents itself, you have all this damage to deal with on the back end. So really, keeping your head on a swivel and maintaining that robust facility hygiene is super important. Can't stress it enough.
Especially for the pathogens that you don't see until it's too late, right? I mean, that's also why having strict protocols on what is the regular month, is it monthly testing on your mom stock? Is it every 2 weeks? Like you can test as much as you want, but as long as you have a strict schedule to make sure that you're on that testing schedule, you'll notice stuff in between visually, right? You'll start to notice if something is actually looking a little off because you have that regimen. And also about when we're talking about intake, you should probably be testing at intake for not only just, hop slate and viroid, because I know that's probably one of the most prolific pathogens that we've all seen and experienced at this point, but also fungal. And, there's a lot of things that, Fusarium and Pythium that can transfer very easily on that intake process that not a lot of people think about, and it's something that you should be looking at all stages of the way. Go ahead, Justin.
So I'll be careful how I say this, but I don't trust anybody. And I say that in the nicest way. We're all human. We're all capable of making mistakes, myself included. So with that mindset, I prefer to build a system where if and when something happens, it's secluded to sections, and you have constant checks and you have constant pressure forward of clean practices so that if something happens, you catch it and you get it out of the way quickly, and it doesn't become an issue. Because a lot of facilities I visit, they scale their issues very quickly through bad practices. And they're all good humans. They're all trying to do good work. They just sometimes focus on, helping each other instead of building a system that keeps everybody honest. So like in our lab, we have a two-party authentication type system where we verify together, not by ourselves. Everybody has to mark everything together, confirm together. And we also doing the meristematic process helps us. So we have a quarantine room, and in that quarantine room, I actually make sure to use a lot of IPM practices. I get healthy plants first before intaking them. And then part of our intake protocols do things that, strip the plant of the cuticle, bleach it very well, and then doing the meristematic excision itself. Non-vascular tissue comes without systemic pathogens that a lot of these folks have to worry about. So that's a way for us to start clean and stay clean. And then moving forward beyond that, we still do a lot of pathogen indexing, whether it be viruses, viroids, fungal, bacterial pathogens, all of it. We constantly check our work and make sure that it is proper because, again, humans can make mistakes. So making sure that every section of our lab is constantly being inspected by each other, keeping us all honest is what keeps us clean and keeps us in business and helps other people scale their businesses and become successful.
Excellent. Thank you for that, guys. Let's talk about forecast. Oh, Fred, would you like to add?
Is that me or you? No,
We're good.
it was Justin. No. The only thing I wanted to add was if you don't do your own testing, really make sure you find a very good, reliable testing partner. Because we found over the years, we've tried just about every testing company out there, and we're very comfortable with the testing company we have right now. And it gives us really good third-party validation on good things and bad things. So I would just say make sure you test often, and do it with a company that you can trust. I also see where the main vector for me, in one of our nursery buildings, we have like over 6,200 moms. They're all meristematic Gen 0. We keep them for about 4 months, and then we turn them over with new stock. But where I see the worst thing that can come into our nursery is always the new people when we're scaling. And I can see some of our people out there that work in the nursery nodding their head because our leads, our managers, our production team, they're Cracker Jacks. But when we bring 10 new people in, you know, it's always the new people that kind of go outside the SOPs. And so you really have to guard against that, even in your cultivation facilities. In our nursery, we have posters up everywhere that go through and validate every SOP we have for every practice that we have. So somebody can always take a quick look up at the wall if they don't remember the PowerPoint they went through, if they didn't go through the personal training they went through. And I'm just telling you, train your people, because we're very serious about it, because we know any problem we create in our facility, we're passing on to you folks. So, and we don't want to do that.
Well said, Fred. How about this? Forecasting and aligning schedules. All right, so this is the part of the professional maturity discussion that I think we can impart on the cultivators that we work with. How can we be a better extension of their business by expressing how we can forecast better with them, right? What does that look like? Who'd like to start that off?
Start off.
Yeah, go ahead.
So definitely for tissue culture nurseries and lining up a timeliness for offtake, one of the things about the TC clones is the condition that they're arriving to cultivators in. We're coming out of a very sterile, highly controlled lab environment. One of the more difficult things with the TC clones that we provide is specifically acclimation to humidity. We're coming from a really high level of humidity in the packs that we deliver, and we do actually recommend about a week-long acclimation process for our TC clones. And understanding the nature of, especially indoor cultivation, really turn and burn right. You want to pull your room down and have it ready to load the next day, and bearing in mind sort of the nature of the TC clones and this acclimation process that we propose. It's just aligning that schedule right, receiving clones early enough to put them through that acclimation process and have them prepared to fill that next room. And it's just one of the novelties of tissue culture, that specific acclimation process. But ultimately dealing with any living product, the forecasting that goes into production, and the issues that come with jostling delivery times. Sometimes the plant stock will fare just fine, being pushed over an extra week, but once we start getting into issues like orders being moved a month back, etc., we are dealing with a living product, right? It's really difficult to pivot once the plant has begun elongating. We have a terminal size that we choose to reject once it's gotten to that point, just because of a product form factor, and just the importance of forecasting, both for us as producers and y'all as operators to be able to intake effectively is really important. So.
It's a really good point, because I'm not okay if you call me and tell me that you want to push out a week. Like, I want to deliver you that clone when it's at its optimal height to hit that vigor, right? And a big part of this is why we talk in week numbers, right? Week 1, January 1st. If you've heard me talk about we're in week 17 right now, like that's what I'm referring to. So we sell based off of week numbers, right? That allows us to give the plant plus 1 or 2 days. So if we're forecasting an order right in that Wednesday, we'll let you know it's coming up in that week. But I want to send you the plant when it's at its most optimal point of health. So communication, right? Understanding what is that flexibility. So anytime I'm onboarding a client, I talk to them about their schedule, right? We all do. What does your schedule look like? How much time do you have in between your room flips? or your planting season, when is that optimal time for you guys? Great. But an indoor, it's pretty set, right? You're trying to get your 5.5 turns a year. So you can't miss a day. You can't miss 2 days. You can't miss a week. So a lot of this pressure happens when genetic selection changes, right? We're all fighting that market battle right now from the candy side of things. But this also goes back to just making sure that you have a clear and concise plan. Being a good partner means that we're scheduling things, we're being very communicative. If we have any pest or pathogen issues, hey guys, this is what we just identified, this is what we treated for, right? This is exactly what we're dealing with. I'd love to let you know, this is what we dealt with. I'm not gonna just slide one past you. That's not why I'm here today. I think anybody that's bought clones from me before and we've had a challenge, that's how we address it. Right, Mark? It's exactly how we built this business model, because we started this thing in the 215 space where we didn't know how to address that problem. We didn't know the solutions. We didn't have the supplier partners in this room that we can turn and call and be like, can you help? We didn't have those solutions. So now we do. There's no excuse. If you have a problem, you should be talking about it. And we understand there's a level of expectation that you're getting when you're buying clones or tissue culture plantlets. There's a lot of expectations. So the more you know, the better communication expectations you can set with each other.
I'd love to add to that. Our motto is like try to deliver on time, in quality, and in full. And in order for us to do that, we just need planning. And so we plan internally, but then we also just need our customers to plan. And so when our our farm partners give us a nice spreadsheet and a plan of all their rooms and all their weeks, we hit it sweet and really nice and everything's smooth. But if it's always like an order by order basis, we find challenges in them not always getting the strains they want or some little hiccup. And to make it just fluid, we find that like, hey, let's map this thing out 6 months in advance if we can.
Spotlights happen. Shit happens, right? There's pressures that maybe you need to kill those plants. We're gonna make a decision to kill the plants. No problem. You got any backstock? Of course. Like we want to make sure that we have stuff ready in addition to the stuff that's forecasted. That's the best part about being able to have that candid conversation. Right, hey, we maybe missed this particular batch. Here's why. This is how we dealt with it. There's also this backup option, whatever the case might be. And I'm throwing this isn't a constant thing, but shit happens. Like every now and then, issues do occur.
Yeah, Chris is back there. I don't know if he's talking to somebody, but he works magic with that stuff. So if it's I needed a last minute extra 100 plants or something like this, we always plant spec. For those reasons, just to make sure we can always patch fill or just have patch inventory, make sure nobody's got an empty little corner in the room.
Amazing. One more. Yeah, go ahead.
Just real quick, like I said earlier, we do a lot of characterization. So it's your phone. We do a lot of characterization. So we order about 70,000 stems for our own facilities every year. And we do a really good job of forecasting that because it's hard for our nursery, put it this way, our nursery can really complain at us if we don't forecast properly. So it's really important for us to forecast out at least 6 to 8 weeks in advance. And I'd really love to see this industry because I think it would really benefit the cultivators, the nurseries, and everybody if we all just did a little better job of prioritizing our orders, understanding what we want to buy before we need to buy them. And it's really helped us. I mean, because in the past, I'll tell you, we would be using our leftover clones, right? It was like, well, we didn't sell these, let's grow them. Well, that's not what our whole facility is about. It's about characterization. So we have to get our orders in. So we've done a really good job on doing that. So I'd really love to see, and it's very difficult because this is an industry that there's not a lot of capital, right? And it's hard to plan when you don't know where the money's coming from. But I really do truly believe if we all do a little better job in the planning, the money will come, right? So I would just kind of tell everybody, we've been able to do it. Fortunately, a lot of our salespeople, our clients allow us to actually do their selections for them. So we can be 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks out, and we're providing them with the clones that we know will do well in the market. And we've gained that trust with them over time. So forecast. I think we'd all agree on that, right?
That's it.
Please.
Okay, we just powered through the first part of the conversation. Great job, guys. What I'd like to do now is we're going to give away an Aroma Go. And so one lucky cultivator in this room right now, by show of hands, who's not growing with Aroma sensors right now? Raise your hand. Okay, Who wants to grow with the Arroyo sensors? Keep your hand raised. Okay. How about the guys that are not? Yeah, so you guys have, okay, so I got Mr. Brad Wood with the Arroyo back here. Let's give a round of applause for Brad for supporting this initiative. Thank you, Brad. And before we get into announcing the winner of that Arroyo Go, I also wanted to kind of talk about going back to validation, right? Making sure that we do have an irrigation strategy for the clones or the genetics that we're putting out in the market is the goal. How do you do that? How do you track and manage when you're making these selections, going through the 2-3 commercial validation rounds of cultivation, right? We don't just send shit out there. We want to make sure that we have a proper strategy applied to that, which is why a cool feature that Arroyo is releasing in the very near future is the genetic recipe setting process. Talking about the characterization, right? That is very key, and that's an element that as a nursery, I find this to be one of the coolest things that we can actually deliver with the clone, with that QR code right on the plant stake or wherever it is on the website. And if you actually want to get that genetic information, and which includes the DNA fingerprint, and you can get the irrigation recipe for that specific cultivar within the Arroyo platform, that's coming. So Brad, I want to thank you again for working on that project, man. Like, that's a super cool tool. And again, that's how we can de-risk the first run with the new genetic that you're bringing into your facility. And there's a lot of fire coming out in the near future, guys. So, by show of hands again, one last time. Arroyo users? Non-Arroyo users that want to check out the Arroyo Go system. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, Brad, this is your call, man. I want you to give me who the winner is of these 12 people. Let's do this. You got one? Okay. Where else are we? What'd you got? 2? Back here. Pick a number. Pick a number before 1 and 12. I got a number in my head. Tell me. 7? 10? 9? What was it? She held it. That's it. It was 8. It was 8. I would also like to throw a little shout out because Miss Savannah was also performing live before this live stream even hit. So if you guys weren't watching, we want to throw a shout out to Savannah because she killed it during her live performance here earlier today. So round of applause for Savannah. You will be coming back to perform with us again, please. Thank you. So Brad, thank you, brother. Appreciate the support.
We use them in all our facilities as well. Sorry for the shameful plug, but it's really good environmental stuff.
We use the Arroyo atmosphere to actually calibrate other sensors. So yes, thank you. It's really good stuff. Guys, the fun part, Q&A. This is it. We're going to open up the panel discussion. This is your time. Anything goes. I mean, you see some topic guidelines over here. Obviously, it's not standard, but any questions that you guys have for our panelists up here? Anything at all? Who'd like to start? We got a question right back here. Name and where you're from, sir.
Angel Fernandez from My Flora DNA. So my question is for all the tissue culture labs. Do you request exclusivity to your breeders?
I can answer that on ours. Sure. Oh, thank you. And I'm sure everybody would want to answer this, but we have basically 2 levels. We have an exclusive level and then a premium level. Of course, the exclusive level captures a larger royalty, and the premium is a lesser royalty. So that gives you the ability to take it up to at least 2 other people. So that's how, we want to get your creations out there the best we can. So if you have relationships with a couple other folks, we don't want to inhibit those. But of course, exclusivity is our preferred method, but we have that other tier just to help the breeders out, to give them the ability to do things they want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to piggyback off that, right? It's all about making a mutually beneficial relationship for both parties, right? So to Fred's point about breeders already having been working with certain folks, we don't want to step on any necks here. So obviously exclusivity is something preferred. It helps us kind of launch the genetic in tandem. But ultimately, it's about creating a mutually beneficial relationship. So whichever pathway that tends to go down, it's really about a mutual effort. So.
Great question. Thank you. I had a hand raised somewhere over here. Right here. Mr. Name and where you're from, sir.
Jacob Nelson, North Country Farms. I guess my question is, what's the number one factor for relationship between nursery and cultivator? Like, what is the number one value for you?
Any of our panelists like to start off?
Well, I come from the construction community, and if you're not a value-add partner, you don't get work, right? And I think in this industry, even more so than that industry, because I've never seen a vertical in a business structure that can affect another vertical in such a dramatic way, either positively or negatively, right? So nurseries, when I came into this business, I was thinking, wow, this nursery business can't be too bad. Then I found out what a bad rap the nursery business had. So I would say, if a nursery isn't value add, if you don't feel like you're getting what you need from them to better your product, then there's no sense in doing business with them. And that includes us. If we can't help you scale your business, if we can't help you get a higher ticket for your products, then we're of no use to you. So I would say value add. And then just in the same level of that, on the same parallel is, making sure that they don't affect your nursery in a negative way with pathogens, bacteria, funguses, things like that. It's one of the reasons why we switched to a meristematic tissue culture model 2 years ago. It's just in our last tissue culture program, we saw the reemergence after 2 or 3 years of different pathogens and viroids and bacteria and fungi and stuff like that. So we spent a lot of money changing to go to the meristematic version, so that way we felt like we wouldn't negatively impact people out there that are trying to make a living growing cannabis. So I would think those two things. If we're not value add, or we're negatively affecting you with infecting you with dirty genetics or things like that, you shouldn't use us.
This is a near and dear to my heart question. Thank you for asking this, Jacob. For me, it comes back to trust and transparency, in addition to everything that you guys just touched on. I want to know if shit happened. Talk to me, right? And that was one of my first true experiences of really cutting my teeth in the nursery genetic space was when I got the call. And I'm going to throw a little kudos to Chad Salute with Kush Alley, Maven Genetics, because he made that call extremely challenging, but it made me better. Because he brought something to my attention that I didn't recognize. And nobody had recognized that they wanted to actually tell me about. So at that time, he brought to my attention, hey man, we tested that clone that you just brought us, and it's positive for hop slate and viroid. My heart sank. I cried that night. I'm not gonna lie, it was the most impactful thing that I've ever heard, because I thought we were doing every single thing from a protocol perspective, from a cultural perspective, right? We spent a lot of time with our team to make sure that they have those practices in place. But he brought this to my attention, and that improved our process. Maybe we had a gap in the process at that point. This is early on, this is like early 2020. And at that point, I was very concerned, but it was also a growing moment for us personally and professionally, because I knew people like Chad existed out there, and that's why I'm so forthcoming. That's really why I love developing the relationship with my cultivation partners. I don't have clients. I have partners that I want to grow with. That's also why we do a lot of pheno hunting with our partners. I know a lot of genetics companies, I know a lot of breeders that want us to do validation with them because they know that we have that kind of candor. We have that validation process with certain cultivators that want to work with us because they know they're going to get first whack at the new genetics, because they can give us that feedback. We can test them. We can work with them, get the irrigation strategy dialed in with them. It's all time. It's money. Like, it's not free to run new plants under a light. that shit takes time, it takes money, it takes resources. We want to make sure that we're working with the right people when we're doing that too. Great question. Thank you.